Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So again, insomnia, couldn't sleep. Let me make sure I'm up before I do this. There's one other story I want to do. I probably won't get to it till tomorrow, but I saw this story. I want to do this story. Let me make sure I can hear myself. This one is not going to be too long. And I didn't necessarily want to have to push up and everything else, so I figured I'd just do it live. All right. So first of all, guys, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. I've been getting pretty decent viewings on the most recent videos, particularly for the live showing. So totally appreciate it. Couldn't have live shows, couldn't have the conversation back and forth if people didn't actually show up for the conversation back and forth. I understand that sometimes the videos can be a little long. But again, I try to make the point that the initial part of the video is just me giving my spiel. The secondary component of the video is just me interacting with the audience. And that's not on all videos, that's just on a few. So thank you very much. Whether you like the videos, whether you share the videos, whether you help with Patreon, or whether you contribute Super Cash, thank you very much. You guys are immensely appreciated. Early on, when Bernie Sanders first came out on Meet the Press, and Bernie Sanders gave the statement essentially agreeing that Russia had tried to assist Donald Trump and that Russia was trying to help his campaign. And right away, they used that to attack Jill Stein, essentially saying if Jill Stein wasn't in the race, wouldn't those people have gone to Hillary Clinton? Now, that's not true. And yeah, they were making this argument that those votes belong to Hillary Clinton and that for all intents and purposes, Jill Stein shouldn't have been in the race in the first place. Now, this is a horrible argument and horrible reasoning, but this is the reasoning that the media was going with. Now, back to Sanders for a moment. Jill Stein shot this down 10 ways to Sunday. She wasn't having it. She wasn't standing for it. And she stood her ground. She held her shape and she shot it down right off the bat. Sanders, not so much. Sanders became squishy. He kind of somewhat fell apart under the spotlight. And corroborated the idea that Russia was helping his campaign, was helping Jill Stein, was helping Donald Trump. He corroborated this to use this as this kind of touchstone in order to attack Donald Trump. But it's suspected that he's also doing this because he feels like he needs to curry favor with that wing of the party, the batshit crazy wing of the party. And the wing of the party of a bunch of maniacs who are Hillbots who can't and don't have a paradigm of why Hillary Clinton will lose to Donald Trump, to reality shows. My issue with this was you're throwing all of these lefty groups under the bus. And for all intents and purposes, nobody is going to remember the context that you're adding to this conversation. You saying, and his argument was, I contacted the Hillary Clinton campaign and we told her that there was something weird going on. Why didn't Hillary Clinton do anything? The immediate story after that was Bernie Sanders is attacking Hillary Clinton. Now, Bernie Sanders had already said, yes, Russia was trying to help these campaigns out. He tried to add the caveat of at the end of the cycle, meaning after I got out the race. Well, nobody's going to remember that, buddy. Nobody's going to remember that you said after you got out the race. The only part they're going to remember is Bernie Sanders cooperated that all of these groups were being assisted and helped by Democrats. And right now, that's all they're saying. Trump and Russia, Bernie Sanders and Russia, Jill Stein and Russia. Nobody is going to remember the context of the statement that you gave. Meaning, for a bunch of people who are looking for a reason to understand how the most qualified woman in the history of politicians could ever lose to reality shows, if they hear anything about Facebook ads, if they hear anything about Russia, they're going to jump on it. So the idea that ads that really had no impact on the election at all, in their mind somehow topple the election, is ludicrous at best. It is a stretch of the imagination to even come to that particular conclusion. And yet, it's what they're saying, and it's what they're using to undermine Donald Trump, but also Bernie Sanders to undermine you. Do you understand that if you, Bernie Sanders, say that the Russian government was helping Donald Trump, that it's bad enough that Hillary Clinton had to run against Donald Trump, she also had to run against the Russian government. You also understand that that line of logic, that logic also goes against you. It cuts against you. It cuts against your supporters. It cuts against the left. It's bad enough Hillary Clinton had to run against Bernie Sanders, but she also had to run against Vladimir Putin in Russia. It cuts both ways. It cuts both ways. My biggest point to this was, not only are you undermining the left, but they are not going to give you what you want out of this. Meaning you're still going to be attacked. So when you come out saying, I gave Hillary Clinton this information, and they say, oh my God, Bernie Sanders saying it's Hillary Clinton's fault. It's Hillary Clinton's fault. Now, I need to interject here for the moment before moving on to the next part of this. We're talking about Facebook and Twitter ads. That's what they're talking about, Facebook and Twitter ads. It's an amazing heft of the imagination to believe that a bunch of Facebook and Twitter ads somehow, that we know, had no impact on the election. Just studies of the election itself, no impact on the election. But even if there were no studies on this, a bunch of Facebook and Twitter ads will have to have the same impact as Hillary Clinton's Twitter army. I mean, what, $6 million in a Twitter army. All of her own Facebook ads, all of the people, the celebrities who are backing Hillary Clinton up saying, vote Hillary Clinton. All the lefty media outwork saying, vote Hillary Clinton. All of the talk show hosts saying, vote Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton herself crooning with Mary J. Blige. Hillary Clinton jumping on one talk show after the next. Not to mention her own campaign ads and the $1 billion, the over $1 billion war chest. We would have to believe that a bunch of Facebook and Twitter ads that had no impact on the election had to have some comparison to everything that was allowed against those Facebook and Twitter ads. And mind you, those Facebook and Twitter ads weren't saying anything that the campaigns weren't saying. There was no impact. So, again, I need to inject that. No impact on the election. And then I add in the other caveat is we do worse. Even within the last campaign, we destroyed a country. We do worse. We inject ourselves into other people's elections all the time. What is that? Clapper, one of the CIA people, they asked him on Fox News, hey, do we do that? He starts laughing. Only for good reasons. Only for good reasons. When we do it, it's for good reasons. When they do it, shame on them. Bernie Sanders in Politico today, I see this. And this is one of those things where I feel like I told you so. I knew that this exactly was going to happen. You would never get the redemption that you're seeking in this. And at the end of the day, they're going to find ways to undermine you and attack you because they hate your guts. And this is exactly what takes place. So this is Politico. Bernie Sanders promoted false story on reporting Russian trolls. Now, this is true, by the way, but it's true, by the way, in two parts. And it's true in an ironic way that this particular author is not talking about. The Vermont senator claim of sharing suspicious activity on Clinton's campaign never happened. They say it never happened. Now, just to give a snapshot of what's taking place, Bernie Sanders went out and said, look, we shared information with the Clinton campaign. And we tried to tell them that there was something weird going on because we had just finished our campaign and yet you were still getting all this activity on the sites. This is what Sanders said. Now, the article is making this point of, well, first, they didn't give this information to Clinton campaign. It was this kind of super PAC associated with the campaign. And it wasn't Bernie Sanders who told the people to actually do this, meaning it wasn't people directing somebody in the Sanders camp to do this. It was somebody who took it upon themselves to do this. And mind you, they contacted the super PAC. The super PAC is not supposed to have any association with the campaign itself. So even that gets a little weird. The gentleman who sent this off kind of made this point of nobody directed me to do this, and I'm going to charge Sanders for back pay, making this joke that nobody told me to do this. I did this on my own because I thought something was weird. The person didn't make the connection with the Russians, but he thought there was something weird. Now, the author's point in this is to kind of piece what Sanders is saying. Now, it's possible that Bernie Sanders is taking this argument of, well, this guy was affiliated with my campaign in some way. And because he was affiliated with my campaign in some way, no, I might not necessarily direct him to do so. But if he's a part of my campaign and we're giving this information over to somebody else, then is it insane for Sanders, the candidate himself, to believe that somebody in his campaign imparted that information to Clinton? It's not insane to believe that. It's not insane. Not necessarily accurate, but it's not necessarily insane to believe it. Is it also makes sense that Sanders, seeing that he was in somewhat of a firestorm, was looking for some answer to this particular firestorm in order to kind of cover himself, saying, look, I gave this information over to them Don't look at me. We did the best that we can, and I campaigned for Clinton like nobody's business. That's also possible. Both could possibly be true. Now, the irony here is, and the article, the author technically is probably right, that this was not necessarily the most precise thing in the world, but it's difficult to know whether or not Sanders meant any negative intent. Meaning if he went into this knowing that he was outright lying when he was making these statements. But it's kind of besides the point. The reason that he's in this particular quagmire is because he accepted the premise of the argument in the first place. If you didn't accept the premise of the argument, you wouldn't get into this weird quagmire of trying to explain yourself. I mean, now it looks as if they caught you in a lie. That's what it looks like. The big splashy headline on Politico is, "You misled people with this Russia nonsense." Now, they've already jumped the shark from the standpoint of Trump and Russia. They've jumped the shark on that. Nobody remembers that this had no impact on the election. They don't care about that. What they care about is Russia tried to interact with our election, and you've given them ammo saying that Russia tried to undermine democracy and Russia tried to take down American democracy, and there needs to be severe consequences. You've given the story legitimacy. You've given the story legs, and now those legs are chasing you. This is one of those questions of how long have you beaten your wife? How often do you beat your wife, Mr. Sanders? How often do you hit Jane in the eye? There's no right way to answer that question. And the fact is, if you're being asked that question, it looks bad. It doesn't matter what the answer is. The fact that you're being asked the question in the first place, it looks bad. Now, in this case, you have a bunch of hillbots, and you have a lot of people that you've been trying to curry favor with. And you've been saying that there's some legitimacy to this Russia nonsense, despite this not having any impact on the election at all. You're still saying severe consequences. You're still saying that they tried to undermine democracy and that they were running against Trump. And now they're using that against you. A, Bernie Sanders is blaming Hillary Clinton. B, Bernie Sanders was helped with Russia just like Jill Stein was helped with Russia, just like Donald Trump was helped with Russia. And C, Bernie Sanders lied about assisting Hillary Clinton's campaign with the information. So you've just admitted, or you've just said that, yes, this was serious. Russia tried to attack these campaigns, and Russia tried to help my campaign and help these other campaigns up. And now they've followed this up saying, yes, Bernie Sanders has agreed that this was serious, and Bernie Sanders has agreed that Russia was trying to influence the election. But Bernie Sanders, even though he agreed to this, did not in any way give this information to Hillary Clinton in the way that he said he was giving the information to Hillary Clinton. I'm making a point to you that if you would have never accepted the original premise of this, you wouldn't have fallen into this weird rabbit hole where they're asking you these bizarre questions, trying to make you look guilty. They're trying to make you look like your campaign was somehow assisted by Vladimir Putin. And the fact is, you've given them ammunition to make that argument. And you've given them the second ammunition to make it look as if you lied to the public when saying that you tried to assist Hillary Clinton's campaign and get into the bottom of this. It's a goddamn shame. The irony of this is that Bernie Sanders was lying about this, but not in the way that the author was talking about. A false story on reporting for the Russian trolls. The false story here is that there's any legitimacy to this in the first place. You're being raked over the coals for something that had no impact on the election, and that's something that we ourselves as a country do all over the world. Can't believe you accepted the premise of this. You smeared all of your other people, and now the smearing is coming back to hit you in the knees. So, Bernie Sanders, this was not the best idea for you to take this on. This was not the best idea for you to get this legitimacy. You should have hit the story in the knees the moment they brought the story up. Because the fact is, it wasn't Russian trolls. Blacks weren't pissed off. They weren't joining Black Lives Matter because of Russian trolls. They were joining Black Lives Matter because African Americans was getting shot in the face and cops were walking. Muslims were pissed off because the person that Democrats put up was perfectly okay with toppling democracies or toppling representative governments or governments abroad, whether they were democracies or not. She was into toppling democracies abroad. She already had thousands of people on her conscience as is. And Bernie Sanders supporters weren't just pissed off for the sake of being pissed off. It wasn't the Russians. It was because they cheated you. They cheated you. And not only did they cheat you, you're covering up the fact that they cheated you with this Russian nonsense. And they're using this Russian nonsense to hit you in the knees. The same legitimacy that you gave to this in order to attack Trump is the same legitimacy that you gave this to attack you. Not only did you give it legitimacy, they also caught you in a lie, saying that, yes, the story is legitimate, and no, I didn't necessarily give this information to Hillary Clinton. And whether and it's kind of besides the point. It looks bad. I can almost tell you a debate question that's going to end up coming up. Mr. Sanders, you said you gave the information to the Hillary Clinton campaign during the Russia attack. You've agreed that it was an attack on democracy itself, and there needed to be severe consequences. But do you also accept that you yourself was being assisted by the Russians in the same way that Donald Trump and Jill Stein was being assisted by the Russians? Is that a question you really want to answer? What about the follow-up to that? Well, you said you gave information over to the Hillary Clinton campaign, but our records show that you didn't really give any information over to the Clinton campaign. Were you being dishonest? And if so, why? Mr. Sanders, how long have you beaten your wife? How long have you beaten your wife? Those are the questions that are going to come up. So, I'm not going to keep this one long. It's 2:44 in the morning, and I wanted to get this one in quick. So, guys, in normal circumstances, you know, I take a bunch of questions. Didn't you know you're supposed to vote for Hillary Clinton? Oh, God. Why doesn't Gary Johnson get any blame as well? Jill Stein is the easier target. No, that's why. Look, so the reason why. So Putin owns Hillary. That's funny. The reason why Gary Johnson doesn't get any blame in this, because they look at Jill Stein's votes as being Hillary Clinton's voters. In their warped mind, Jill Stein shouldn't be in the process. That for all intents and purposes, Jill Stein, if she was out of the contest, that those people would have magically just voted for Hillary Clinton. This is wishful thinking at best. When they look at the actual polling results and they actually talk to the people who made those votes, over 60% would have just stayed home. She still wouldn't have gotten the votes. And then the rest, or more than half of the rest, or the remaining, would have went to Donald Trump. Meaning she would have lost by worse than what she lost if Jill Stein was not in the race. They have this warped belief system that for whatever reason these votes are Hillary Clinton's, and that Jill Stein somehow snuck up in the dead of night and pilfered the votes out of her pockets at the last minute. This is fucking insane and ridiculous. Nobody owns those votes. Nobody owns those votes. If they want your vote, they need to say something in order to entice to get that vote. It's not something you should give in this kind of perfunctory way where you're terrified of one, so you just give to the other. Fuck that. We're not grading on a curve. Either they toe a line or they don't get your vote at all. And until people stand in their power like that with this uniformity of no, it's something that they don't necessarily agree with, then nothing changes. Nothing changes. Bernie Sanders, in this particular case, needed to stand with a fair amount of integrity and hold the line in the same way that Jill Stein held the line. I'm not necessarily saying that you can attack Donald Trump. You can find a way to work it back around to attack Donald Trump, but not in a way that you undermine yourself and your base, and certainly not in a way where if you're going to try to run again in 2020, that they're not going to be able to hit you over the head with over and over and over again and make you look insane, like you were lying to the American public, or that you were worse, being assisted by Russians. That it wasn't the failure of the status quo. It wasn't the loss of legitimacy of the Democratic Party. It wasn't the complete collapse with regards to finances and with regards to being able to win a goddamn election. It wasn't any of that. Only thing they're going to remember is Bernie Sanders and Russia, just like Trump and Russia. That's all they're going to remember. The independent senator from Vermont, the Colin Powell of our generation, coming out saying that Russia's hacked us, or Russia attacked us. I'll leave it at that. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the Patreon. I really wish this was one of those times where I am curious to know what's in Sanders' head. Some people say it doesn't matter. I'm curious to know what's in his head. It's kind of besides the point. He's being hit with this, and he will be hit with this, and this will make another appearance if Sanders runs for president. I write this down save this video, they will ask him that question that I asked earlier. So, all right, guys. Have a good night.